those who cross into a kill zone with an invisible line, including many civilians, and when they cross, they are then posthumously termed terrorists with no evidence whatsoever. 40,000 Palestinians are likely to have been killed or more in Gaza because the official statistics exclude those buried under the rubble. Now, the point about Joe Biden and his position there, Joe Biden's hot air all the way through has been a defining feature of this conflict, so-called conflict, genocidal onslaught against the people of Gaza. He has armed and backed Israel as it has caused so much destruction. A large majority of Gaza's civilian infrastructure is now severely damaged or destroyed, so Gaza is now a different colour and texture when looked at from space, where around 13,000 plus children have died violent, horrible deaths, either with their buildings coming down on top of them or being burned and cooked slowly to death or suffocated or both at the same time. And that point, which I did think was editorialising on the part of your journalist, was that it was beyond any doubt or any reason that, it was completely unthinkable that the US could pull the plug on arms, because that would then pose an existential threat to Israel. That's in Israel's court. Israel has decided to starve the people of Gaza, the fastest drop in the nutritional status of a population in recorded history. The most severe famine since World War II now beckons. You have people in the north at the moment who are starving to death and eating animal feed in order to live. As David Cameron, Foreign Secretary, not someone I normally quote, detailed in a letter which led, I would note, the sacking of the Israeli spokesperson Elon Levy, which is probably why you don't have him on your news channel anymore, is because Elon Levy made false statements about aid trucks being allowed in, which then David Cameron went through and said that wasn't true. Israel had gone to great lengths to stop them coming in. The point I'm making is, Israel, all the way through this, has been raising civilian infrastructure to the ground. It has conducted the biggest killing of aid workers in recorded history. And the point I would make, and this is why I think there's a bit of journalistic malpractice which has defined this conflict, Israeli leaders and officials were very clear from the very beginning about what they were going to do. They didn't hide it. You don't have to go through leaked documents. You just have to listen to, for example, to Yoav Gallant, the defense minister who's in the war cabinet of three, who said 2 days after the atrocities committed by Hamas on the 7th of October, that they were going to cut off food, water, and all the essentials of life on the grounds they were fighting human animals. And then on the 9th of October, he declared he was lifting all restraints on soldiers. And a day later, he said he was lifting all restrictions on Israeli soldiers. We've now seen that, and the impunity that Israel enjoys from the West has led to aid workers who shared their coordinates on a pre-approved route with massive World Central Kitchen logos, who were chased from car to car with a drone until every single one was there. And I'll tell you this, if that's true with those aid workers, Palestinians, ordinary Palestinians, don't have a chance. And Joe Biden has sat through all of this, wringing his hand occasionally whilst ensuring Israel has the answer.
Let me give you a chance. I'm interested that there's a lot that I'm sure some of the phraseology you won't agree with. But quite a lot of this facts as well. Some of this is facts, isn't it? I mean, Gaza is being absolutely...
Are there no trucks going into Gaza? Is that what you're saying? There's no trucks with humanitarian aid. You're saying that 7 million tons of food today did not enter Gaza. Israel is lying about that?
I can answer that question very clearly. Israel has destroyed much of Gaza's domestic food production and agriculture. Yeah. The amount of food aid, as David Cameron has noted, is much less than before the 7th of October, when the need is much greater. And not only that, the roads have been trashed, okay, for a start. Police officers which guard those trucks have been deliberately targeted by Israel, with Joe Biden's own administration condemning Benjamin Netanyahu for doing that. Whether it comes to the infrastructure, for example, the ability to transport the aid around is impossible now. So this is why the destruction of agriculture plus the inability to get
you're throwing a lot of head.
No, and you know what? I do understand why this conflict raises a lot of emotions. I think we need to focus on reality, especially when you are Jewish or Palestinian or Arab. Why you feel so connected to this place and really being hurt and upset. I'm upset. My family, my friends. I lost friends in October 7th. I don't understand why you.
Because I object to genocide. Because I'm a human being.
And of course, it's not a genocide. Because
I'm a human being. That's
would you call every war a genocide? So no, what is genocide?
Because you're seeing the deliberate attempt to starve a population to death, which Israel's own leader said at the beginning of
I think
Israel is now on trial at the International Court of Justice.
And what did they say? Did they say it's a genocide?
So do you know how just quickly on that?
Well,
they can't do that at this stage.
Right, so they can't do it. So why do you bring it up? Because that's what you do. That's what you've done this whole time.
Because they said it was plausible.
Pieces of ideas that are false.
They said it was a plausible case.
The Court of Justice, you can both win that argument, right? Both of you can win on the International Court. No, they haven't said it's a genocide. Yes,
they can't say it's a genocide yet. Just to get
talking about that.
But you can say it's a genocide. The International Court of Justice can't. You can say it's a genocide.
They can legally determine something, but I can.
A British guy in London would tell us it's
a genocide in Gaza. Address this question. Let's get away from the generalization. Let's talk specifically about what happened with these aid workers who were killed on the ground. Yeah. Now, it's a point that Mark Stone made. It's a point that I know you have referred to and said it's revolting. But is it a reality that foreign aid workers present a much greater international challenge to the Israeli government than the deaths of tens of thousands of Palestinians?
Absolutely not. I think that every civilian casualty is terrible, and that's what Israel has been saying since the beginning of this war. I don't think that anyone in Israel, the difference between Hamas and Israel is that when civilians are killed in Gaza, Israelis are not going in the streets and celebrating it. We're not handing out sweets in the streets.
No, but they seem a lot more bothered about the international reaction to these aid workers than they do about the continual death of Palestinian civilians.
I don't think so. I think that the reason that it was so condemned and so important for Israel to come out and condemn it is because it was a targeted attack. It wasn't collateral damage. It was a targeted attack, and Israel came out before the U.S. even woke up. It was in the night in the U.S., and Israel came out and said, "This is a mistake. We've made a mistake. We're going to improve ourselves. We're going to try to do better in the future when we're fighting a war against an organization that is hiding itself among civilian population, building tunnels and shelters the civilians above ground, hoping that Israel would attack those civilians, and then having people in the West going on to channels and defending them. That's the issue here. And there's one country. Let me just finish. There's one country that has built shelters, bomb shelters, invested billions of dollars in the defense system in protecting its civilians. And there's a terrorist organization that has done everything it can, building a channel of tunnels underground in Gaza that is like the London Underground to hide not civilians, to hide hostages, Israeli hostages, and Hamas terrorists and ammunition. That's the problem here, and that's I can't believe that we haven't seen this clearly.
Owen, I want to ask a question actually to both of you.
Well, do I get to answer any of that? Or?
I'd like. Which is this, Owen?
I don't think we just have misinformation on national television that's incorrect.
What are you saying is misinformation there?
Well, I mean, firstly, he accused me of defending Hamas, which I have to say, those smears might have worked once, but it just people watching this think you're desperate. The point about human shields, a brilliant piece of investigative journalism in Plus 972 magazine by the brilliant Israeli journalist Yuval Abraham revealed the use of artificial intelligence, a system called Lavender. And what that does is generate a whole load of low-level operatives generated by artificial intelligence with a collateral damage level per person of those targets of up to 20 civilians. The idea,
which we have to say, the IDF has said that it uses this for information purposes, that it has not used.
Well, 6 separate intelligence sources briefed this brilliant investigative Israeli journalist. Now, you can see what's happened there. What they do, according to this information, is they wait for those operatives to go home when they're in bed with their families there, and they blow them up. And they blow up their kids, and they blow up their families. Can you imagine Hamas was going around blowing up soldiers, Israeli soldiers, in their homes with their children? Now this is and you think that's unacceptable? Okay. I do. The question Israel is doing that state sanctioned. I've said they've committed.
Let's have a reasonable.
You watch the atrocities and you challenge their authenticity.
I want to ask you both a question. I did do that. If Hamas were to release the hostages tomorrow, what happens then?
Look at the West Bank. Look at the number of people who have been slaughtered in the West Bank since this began. Last year alone, before the 7th of October, 240 Palestinian civilians, 40 of them children, were killed in the West Bank. And we were told that was a ceasefire. In the West Bank now, people are being driven from their homes and they're being slaughtered. The West Bank is not run by Hamas, it's run by Fatah, who put down their arms and accepted a peace process. What we're seeing in Gaza already, this idea of releasing the hostages, which I want, taking those hostages was a severe war crime, a grave and unacceptable war crime. And the only way hostages have been released in any significant number is through ceasefire and prisoner swaps. That includes those prisoners who need to be released. And again, the information that's come out today of the treatment of these prisoners who are held without charge, with their handcuffed so much that they've been amputated, as well as the work by Save the Children, which is detailed how child detainees are sexually and physically abused. Now, it's very important that we talk about this.
I wanted you to get a chance. Yeah. Same question. If the hostages were released, what do you think would happen?
I mean, the amount of passion that you have for Palestinian prisoners, but not for the Israelis,
I said it was a war crime. I said it was a war crime,
but they did not describe in specific what the Israeli hostages are going through for 6 months.
Well, I'm asking you,
and I just want to point it out because it's important, because we're seeing this campaign by yourself and others that are pushing those details that are not even true, that are widely contested by every news media and intelligence agency in the world, and if you want to know what would happen if the hostages would be released, go back to October 6th. The reason that the hostages are there is because Hamas went into Israel, committed one of the worst massacres against Israeli civilians, and took innocents from their beds, babies. There's a baby in Gaza that Owen did not mention here, and that's the issue.
I haven't mentioned every war. I said it was a war, severe war crime. The difference between me and you is I condemn all war crimes.
Gentlemen, I'm going to cause
There's much more different between us.
Request a pause at this point. Yeah. Take our breath, and we will come back to this topic later on, but you are watching The World with me, Alan Parsons.